Beirut, and the PLO leaves the beleaguered city. 76 days after Israel's invasion, the Israelis have achieved their aim, to dislodge the PLO from the Lebanese capital. From here, the PLO men will be scattered throughout the Arab world. Their departure marks the end of the battle for Beirut. For Israel, this operation has been a military success, but the PLO refuses to see it as a defeat. These PLO men believe this is a victory because they see themselves as the first Arabs ever to carry their weapons out of a war with Israel. In all, over 10,000 Palestinian fighters have now left Beirut. Their destinations, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, Tunisia, and other Arab countries prepared to receive them in their exile. From there, what happens to them, no one can yet say for certain. By leaving Beirut, the PLO has agreed to give up, at least for the moment, its direct military confrontation with Israel. Now it's up to the peacemakers to find a solution and prevent any more fighting. Fighting in Beirut ended only after intensive diplomatic efforts. An international peacekeeping force was sent to protect and guarantee the Palestinian fighters' safe and free passage out of Lebanon. American, French, and Italian troops moved into position when the Lebanese government officially asked for help. The French sent in troops from the Foreign Legion's 2nd Parachute Regiment. Already back in 1976, at the height of the Lebanese Civil War, France had offered some troops for a peacekeeping mission, but these plans came to nothing. Now, 6 years later, their role isn't to stop the Lebanese factions from fighting. Instead, they're here to help supervise the PLO's evacuation. Once this is done, the multinational force will withdraw and diplomacy will once again take over. Few people have gained anything from the Lebanese tragedy, but PLO leader Yasser Arafat is one of them. He's emerged with new stature, and from the send-off he got as he left, nobody could have guessed that his forces had to clear out to avoid complete military defeat. Despite the jubilation, Arafat's men have taken a severe mauling, and scattered across the Middle East, they won't be easy for him to control or command. According to Israel, the action against the PLO in Lebanon was supposed to be a limited operation. The aim of Operation Peace for Galilee was to secure Israel's northern border up to 40 miles inside Lebanon. But as the operation developed, the aim widened to include the eviction of the PLO from Beirut and its destruction as a military threat. Within 3 weeks of crossing the Lebanese border, Israeli forces rolled on towards Beirut. Never before had Israel gone so far in a military operation, but the momentum was such that before the Israeli cabinet could decide what to do, the Israeli army was laying siege to Beirut. By then, it was too late to turn back. For Israel, the time had come to engage the PLO for a final showdown, and Beirut was to be the battleground. Gradually, the Israelis tightened their grip around the city until the PLO was isolated in West Beirut. Although under siege, more than 500,000 people remained in the western part of the city. For them, daily life became a nightmare. After 11 weeks of fighting, over 10,000 people had died. Most of them were civilians. A further 20,000 were injured, the majority seriously. Among the casualties were Palestinian fighters. But Beirut hospital doctors declared at the time that for every PLO wounded, at least 6 civilians were admitted for treatment. As the blockade went on, medical supplies became scarce. Hospitals ran out of blood for transfusions, and basic drugs were no longer available. As a result, many died from their wounds. Some didn't make it as far as the hospital. No one will ever really know the final death toll. The city's destruction was such that many dead may still be buried under the rubble. Now, with the fighting over, those who remained or have returned clear away the damage. The city will be rebuilt. Reconstruction will cost over $10 billion and may take as long as 10 years. The PLO may have gone, but for those who remain in West Beirut, life will be difficult for years to come. For them, it is now a question of rebuilding not just their homes, but their lives. Abu Qadra is a Palestinian. How does he feel about the situation?
As a Palestinian, I was followed by the Israelis since I was born in 1920 in my hometown Jaffa, with the continuous wars between the Arabs and the Israelis and the continuous Israeli aggression backed by America, England, and if I may say, the whole Western world. I had to move from one country to another for a safe refuge away from guns and bombardment.
How do you feel about the Israelis? Do you think they had any justification for removing the PLO threat to them?
They had no justification whatsoever. It's a war. Who wins? But the PLO had the right to defend the Palestinians. I don't talk for the Israeli position. I talk for the Palestinian position. We've become refugees. We were eradicated from our land, from our homes.
Do you think
younger Palestinians feel just as strongly? We spoke to this PLO fighter. What did he feel about world reaction to his people's plight?
It doesn't remove, doesn't react at all. I feel just making some sympathy for us as if they are consulting us, and that's all. They did nothing to us. They did not help us. They did not do anything. We just were by ourselves. And I think according to the balance of forces here, we did very good.
And how about the...
Because we were by ourselves. So we really did good, very good.
How about the Arab reactions? Was it good enough?
Miserable.
What will happen to the Palestinians? Will the struggle continue?
Of course. The struggle will be continue. I'm sure that maybe neither me nor my son will go to Palestine, but our grandchildren will go there, yes.
As a Palestinian, again, I find myself hit in my office, in my house. My house was hit badly. I've got to start again at this age, at 63. So since I was born, I was affected by Israeli aggression and wars. I'm still being affected, and for how long this will continue, and my father was affected, I'm affected. I'm afraid my sons and my kids will be affected. What's the end of this? What's the result? When can we live peacefully with the Jews, with whom we lived at some time in Palestine, very peacefully?
Israel's casualties were only a fraction of the Lebanese and Palestinians, but they were keenly felt nonetheless. Fewer than 350 Israeli soldiers died, but beyond the individual grief, the inevitable question was, should there have been any deaths at all? In other words, should there have been an invasion of Lebanon in the first place? Had it been justified? Had it been worthwhile? In fact, a majority of Israelis still support the government, but a significant minority no longer agrees with its military actions. For the first time, open opposition to war and support for a peaceful solution is becoming apparent. Some Israelis are beginning to feel that war is becoming counterproductive and is losing Israel valuable friends around the world. We asked Israelis how they felt about the continuing conflict. Did Shlomit De Vries, a native Israeli, justify Israel's actions in Lebanon?
Civilian and military.
So it's a hard question to answer. It's very difficult to justify such a thing. War is an ugly thing. It causes casualties on both sides. It's difficult for me to answer. I really am in a debate at that point.
What do you think the effect has been on Israel's reputation or image abroad?
Well, in that sense, I have sort of quite a clear view. I think that in some sense we're a scapegoat of the world because for example, 2 years ago, maybe less, when the Syrians invaded Lebanon in Al-Hama and, murdered 25,000 people there, the whole world sat and, said nothing almost. And we're sort of, we are looked upon it, and I agree, but on the other hand, we're a scapegoat of the world. We're murderers, and in this sense, we were compared to Nazis and so on and so forth. And I think the world will forget it, and like the world forgets all crises.
Do you believe that Israel has lost
Doron Narkis,
lost
student
friends
and reserve
or,
tank
in fact,
commander,
made
does he
enemies
feel
around
Israel
the
lost
world
friends
as a result
because of its action in
operation?
Lebanon?
I imagine so. Whatever Israel does usually loses her friends. But
Is this something that most Israelis care about? If they
I think
make
everyone
friends,
cares. I think everyone cares about it. But most Israelis realize that if the clinch came, Israel would have only herself, maybe the states, to count on. So there's nothing you can do about it either way.
Can the Israelis, as far as you see, ever live in peace with the Palestinians or the Arabs as a whole?
I don't believe it'll happen in my lifetime.
What would it take to create a process that could result in that?
There has to be no fighting for a generation, no hatred between sides for a generation, which is utopia. And then maybe then a new generation will be able to live peacefully on both sides.
The desire for peace is there, but fear remains in the way. Hannah Mashler,
Do you
Hebrew
feel any
University
safer now
director,
that the
does she
Palestinians
feel
have been
safer
driven
now that
out
the
of,
PLO has left Beirut?
Oh yes, definitely.
Even when you, for instance, living in Jerusalem rather than living in the northern Galilee or Naharia?
We'll continue to be very careful, to look in the buses, to look under the benches, to watch out when we go to movies or to theaters or so, like we've always done, and to be very suspicious. But I hope that, maybe the time has come that eventually, they will recognize the right of Israel to exist and not want to fight it.
Do you believe that it is possible for the Palestinians in particular and the Arabs in general to live in harmony with the Israelis?
Yes, positively. I'm sure, I'm convinced about it.
Do you-
Jews and Arabs have lived together for centuries.
A graveyard in Beirut testifies to the latest violence between Arab and Jew. The graves were here before the Israeli invasion, though. They stand as a reminder to the years of war inside Lebanon between Arab and Arab. Factional loyalties have left Lebanon scarred and divided, but many Lebanese blamed
What
much of
about
the
Lebanon?
unrest on the presence of
Do you
Palestinian
believe
guerrillas.
there is a possibility
Mrs.
to
Ann
have
Smith is a
peace between the
Lebanese
warring
married to a
factions?
British businessman. Does she feel that the removal of the PLO is the key to peace in Lebanon?
We're hoping that they will. All our hopes. I as a mother and as a businesswoman and as a citizen all of us want that there should be peace amongst all the warring factions. Why shouldn't they have it?
Do you think the withdrawal of the Palestinians and later the withdrawal of the Israelis, if it happens, will help to bring such peace between the warring factions?
Oh, yes.
The immediate future of Lebanon rests squarely on the shoulders of Christian Maronite leader Bashir Gemayel. The Israelis made no secret about the fact that they wanted to see him as president of Lebanon. That's because they want to sign a peace treaty with him. And the Gemayel clan has long wanted the presidency for its favorite son, too. He was the only candidate in the recent election, and he won. And he made it very clear to reporters that he had high hopes for the future of Lebanon.
I hope it will be the first step in the uniting Lebanon and in having a free and a democratic state. I hope we will be able to achieve all what we have to do in order to have a real parliamentarian system and a real democracy in this part of the world. The results of today were clear enough. We have a very free election. We won it. I hope we will win now more and more the support of all the public opinion to achieve what we have to do.
But has Bashir Gemayel got Lebanon's back? Do the Lebanese feel that he will be able to do a job that has stumped a succession of Lebanese presidents in the past 8 years?
Since he is going to be the president, and he is the president-elect, he should strive and do his best to bring this peace about. And people in Lebanon should help him.
People in the Christian Maronite community have long felt that the ousting of the Palestinian guerrillas would give Lebanon a new start. Families like this one, the Eliases of East Beirut, welcomed the Israeli decision to get the guerrillas out of Beirut. But would the remaining factions back the Christian Maronite leader? We asked Mr. Antoine
will come
Elias.
to an agreement.
Of course. We have in Lebanon, all the people, all the religion in Lebanon, they have no reason to fight each other. The one who was fighting us, he's out of Lebanon, and there will be no more fight in Lebanon.
Samir Gabi is a Muslim Druze. His sect usually backs the Palestinian cause, but he too thinks Gemayel can bring peace.
Of course he can do. And he came and just asking to make peace between, especially with the Lebanese people. And as we noticed from his speech on the TV and on the radio, that he wants to make and solve the problem and make peace between all the Lebanese people, neither Muslim or Christian, and he is going to stop this trouble between both sides.
History professor Dr. Luca Zodo is not so sure, though. He is a Christian who lives in Muslim West Beirut. He spent the last few years teaching in the United States, but when he returned to his homeland, he chose to live away from his Christian fellows. He doesn't like them very much. He'd like to find some harmony in Lebanese society too, but he doesn't think that Bashir Gemayel is the answer.
Well, look, my dear, Bashir Gemayel, it was a leader for a clan who battles against the democracy or the nationalist. I don't believe he can do it. I don't believe. Because already he is, we have our constitution, he must be neutral, our president. He must be neutral for everybody. He asked now to become neutral, but we don't believe he's a neutral man. Already yesterday he gave a speech that our aims, we are arrived to our aims, the phalangist aims, Katab aims, mean he is win as a party leader. Then how become a president for all the peoples here who was not partisan with the Katab or another camp? You know, for that reason I don't believe he can do with this. Maybe in very long issues, maybe he can do it, but now no, I don't believe.
What do you most hope for now?
Really, my most hope is to be finished from this dirty war, because already it was for 8 years a civil war, a kind of civil war, no limit. How they started and how they want to finish, I don't know, because already I was being in the United States for these 6 years. But we ask, we pray to God, Almighty God, to be finished this kind of war. It's a very dirty war. We don't like it. And we want to live in peace.
For thousands and thousands of people in Lebanon, the questions of the future are not so philosophical. They are about survival and reconstruction, both of property and relationships. The real victims of the Israeli invasion are people like these. They suffer because the international community is unable to resolve the 40-year-old so-called Palestinian problem. The world watched as another generation of Palestinian children became pawns in a diplomatic deadlock. However, the end of the siege of Beirut has brought a new American initiative. It calls for a freeze on Jewish settlements in the West Bank and Gaza and the eventual linking of the occupied territories with Jordan. That's not what most Palestinians have been looking for, and the ones we spoke to were bitter about America's relationship with Israel.
Well, if you tell me the Americans are the neutral people, I say no. The Americans are backing the Israelis. If I don't say 100%, I'd say 90%. No matter which American government, regime, or which president, we've seen so many American presidents, starting with Truman and now ending up with our friend, the new boss, Mr. Reagan. They all backed Israel.
Please, I want you to say something to the American people. I lived there for a couple of years, and I knew that when I was there, it was real human people there. I'm really astonished of how does he behave now. I can't understand it.
Despite bitter feelings like these, Americans would say they finally appreciate developments from which Palestinians might take hope. But it's limited. The same night this demonstration took place in Jerusalem, the Israeli Knesset firmly rejected the Reagan peace plan. There's also a new Arab peace plan. At the Arab summit in Morocco, Yasser Arafat was greeted as a head of state. The last time Arabs met in Morocco to discuss a Middle East peace proposal, it ended in fiasco. That was almost a year ago, but the latest summit at Fez came up with a new version of the earlier Saudi plan. It included a few additions that will be hard for the Americans to swallow, and impossible for the Israelis. An independent, fully sovereign Palestinian state to include Arab East Jerusalem, and negotiations under the leadership of the PLO. As these proposals were being leaked to the international press, the Israeli Knesset was totally rejecting Reagan's initiative. So it is hardly likely they will welcome the Fez peace plan, even though for the first time ever, Arabs were hammering out an offer to finally accept Israel's existence. It was supposed to have been a defeat. Some even called it a new Palestinian diaspora. But scenes like this tell a different story. Throughout the Arab world, in Jordan, Iraq, Tunisia, and here in Syria, Palestinians who were forced to leave the Lebanon were given a heroic welcome. The Israelis have announced to the world that the PLO is a spent force, defeated terrorists. Palestinians disagree. When the elation subsides, however, this is what is left for the guerrillas, forced to leave Beirut, a camp on the outskirts of Damascus. It looks similar to many already established around the Arab world. The Palestinian flag flies proudly, but still in exile. Rows and rows of tents testify to the fact that once again the international community has settled for a temporary solution to the so-called Palestinian problem. the PLO leadership will be urging restraint as it tries to hammer out a just agreement with Israel and its superpower guardian, the United States. Some Palestinians have grown used to waiting, but many quiet camps will soon be teeming with young guerrillas, the ones who survived the siege of Beirut. For the sake of their children, they may not feel so patient.
Thank you.